Hi, this is Patty Moore. I'm coming to you from the natural state of North Carolina. I've been following pretty closely the diplomatic side of the Gaza crisis and the Israeli-Hamas war. Security Council today voted down 2 more resolutions that makes 6 failed resolutions, including the one vetoed last week by the United States to open up safe humanitarian corridors for Gaza, where there are at least 2.2 million people at risk of starvation. Today, Oxfam International came out and said it's a collective punishment by use of starvation on an entire population. More and more organizations and country leaders are coming out now with comments such as collective punishment, which is against international law. Yesterday, actually, it started a pretty big dispute in the United Nations between the Secretary-General and Israel. There was a day-long meeting in the Security Council where many people spoke about the situation in the Middle East. And I'm going to bring you those comments here.
The situation in the Middle East is growing more dire by the hour. The war in Gaza is raging and risks spiraling throughout the region. Divisions are splintering societies, tensions threaten to boil over. At a crucial moment like this, it is vital to be clear on principles, starting with the fundamental principle of respecting and protecting civilians. I have condemned unequivocally the horrifying and unprecedented 7 October acts of terror by Hamas in Israel. Nothing can justify the deliberate killing, injuring, and kidnapping of civilians or the launching of rockets against civilian targets. All hostages must be treated humanely and released immediately and without conditions. And I respectfully note the presence among us of members of their families. Excellencies, it is important to also recognize the attacks by Hamas did not happen in a vacuum. The Palestinian people have been subjected to 56 years of suffocating occupation. They have seen their land steadily devoured by settlements and plagued by violence, their economy stifled, their people displaced, and their homes demolished. Their hopes for a political solution to their plight have been vanishing. But the grievances of the Palestinian people cannot justify the appalling attacks by Hamas, and those appalling attacks cannot justify the collective punishment of the Palestinian people. Excellencies, even war has rules.
So Israel's delegation blew up those words. They showed no conscience whatsoever for the civilians in Gaza, and here's what they said.
As hostages by the Hamas. Hamas is worse than ISIS, and like Chancellor Scholz says, they are the new Nazis. There is not two sides at this moment. There is only one side to support in front of the aggression of ISIS. Therefore, I decided to cancel my meeting with the Secretary-General later on today, since we need a clear and loud voice in regards to what happened. We're here to say never again, and I would like to thank all the countries to come to support Israel, President Biden, Chancellor Scholz, President Macron, Prime Minister Meloni, and many others that understand that we are fighting for Israel, but we're also fighting for the entire free world. Otherwise, West will be the next. But we are determined to do everything to eliminate totally the Hamas. I also ask Qatar, which is financed for more than 10 years, Hamas, which is giving a harbor to the leaders of Hamas, to work to release all the hostages. It's in your hand. You are responsible to them. Do it immediately.
I want to remind and maybe explain why there was a need to cancel the meeting, because I've been serving here for the last 3 years, and I saw and I felt the impartiality of the Secretary-General and how he gives the feelings that he doesn't care for this, how he doesn't really care. Expressing empty words is not enough. He doesn't really care for the suffering of the Israeli civilians. But this morning, when he started his speech at the Security Council by saying that Hamas attacks did not happen in a vacuum, this is really something that every decent person, it should be unfathomable for each and every one of us. Mr. Secretary-General, the UN was established to prevent atrocities, to prevent such atrocities like the barbaric atrocities that Hamas committed. But the UN is failing. The UN is failing, and you, Mr. Secretary-General, have lost all morality and impartiality. Because when you say those terrible words that these heinous attacks did not happen in a vacuum, you are tolerating terrorism. And by tolerating terrorism, you are justifying terrorism.
The horrendous terror attack started on October 6th, but as everybody knows, the Middle East, the Israeli-Palestinian issue has been a crisis all along, and we've all seen news reports all throughout our lifetimes of the violence, and it's a cycle of violence, and there has been no peace process as of late. And I will go back and look up when was the last time there was a peace process. It used to be the United States was considered a neutral mediator and would host peace process, but we haven't seen that in years. The two-state solution, the proposed two-state solution, has been off the table, not working. It's failing. However, over the weekend, we saw leader after leader after leader who attended Egypt's Cairo summit. Everybody saying this is the solution, a two-state solution. So, and President Biden today again reaffirmed that this is the United States position. So we do need to talk about the political side, and we do need protections for civilians, because as I say, hearts and minds matter.
I am shocked by the misrepresentations by some of my statement yesterday in the Security Council, as if I was justifying acts of terror by Hamas. This is false. It was the opposite. In the beginning of my intervention yesterday, I clearly stated, and I quote, "I have condemned unequivocally the horrifying and unprecedented 7 October acts of terror by Hamas in Israel. Nothing can justify the deliberate killing, injuring, and kidnapping of civilians or the launching of rockets against civilian targets. End quote. Indeed, I spoke of the grievances of the Palestinian people. And in doing so, I also clearly stated, and I quote, "But the grievances of the Palestinian people cannot justify the appalling attacks by Hamas." End quote. And then I went on with my intervention referring all my positions on all aspects of the Middle East crisis. I believe it was necessary to set the record straight, especially out of respect to the victims and to their families. Thank you.